So I've been arguing that the Colossian hymn is an expression of Paul's wisdom Christology. But for a lot of readers of the New Testament, particularly lay level readers, they are unfamiliar with wisdom Christology in the New Testament, much less a wisdom Christology that Paul the Apostle employed in his letters. So what we have to do first is we have to demonstrate that the Apostle Paul believed in a wisdom Christology and show where it appears in his letters in plain, clear, straightforward passages. There are some passages where it's not exactly clear whether his wisdom Christology is being employed. So I want to look at the clear, plain, straightforward passages that effectively all interpreters, if they look at them as a whole, they will come away with thinking, okay, Paul is portraying Jesus in terms of God's wisdom in some capacity. So beginning in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24, we can see that within the first chapter, Paul is going to make his point quite clear. He says, "But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God." There, right there, 1 Corinthians 1:24, Paul says that Christ is the wisdom of God. That's pretty clear. And then he says it a few verses later in chapter 1, verse 30. He says, "But by his doing, you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, and righteousness, sanctification, and redemption." That's 1 Corinthians 1:30. So Paul is going to say that Jesus became to us Christians, four things: wisdom from God, and then righteousness, sanctification, and redemption. Those final three, righteousness, sanctification, and redemption, nobody has a problem with, but it's this language here of Jesus became to us wisdom from God. That part doesn't get recognition as often as it should. And so you'll notice in the very first chapter of 1 Corinthians, Paul is making this point. He's making this point that he's going to be describing Jesus in terms of God's wisdom. And this reappears. Look in chapter 2 of 1 Corinthians, verses 7 through 8. Paul says, "But we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this," namely understood this wisdom, "for if they had, they would not have crucified," notice, "the Lord of glory." 1 Corinthians 2, 7 through 8. So if the rulers of this age had understood this, and this in Greek is the feminine relative pronoun that relates back to wisdom because Sophia in Greek is grammatically feminine. None of the rulers of this age understood this wisdom. If they would have understood it, they would not have crucified, notice, if they would have understood the wisdom, they wouldn't have crucified wisdom embodied. That is the Lord of glory. That's Jesus. So he goes from talking about wisdom to Jesus, and he just makes the change just like that